Social media is becoming a new monster. It is evolving into something that we've never seen before. And it's no longer a place where you go to, like some cat photos and log off. It's a place where now you're being bombarded with tons of political ideologies, agendas, narratives. A lot of these narratives are being pushed for monetary gain, and you have lots of stuff coming at you now. It's evolved, and hence we have to evolve as people. Now, the reason why this is concerning to me is because it's becoming a cesspool of misinformation and disinformation, right? In this process of the evolution of social media, it's becoming a place where there's lots of room now for misinformation, disinformation, people devaluing what truth is and what the truth is, and devaluing accuracy of their posts, not fact-checking their own posts, right? So all this combined is cause for concern. Because now more than ever is there this very stark dynamic between people and their interactions with social media. Now we have tons of influencers influencing people to make decisions, very important decisions about governments and all kinds of things. So now it's more important than ever that we pay attention to social media and its evolution. And one of the most concerning things to me, what I see, is this sense that if somebody on the opposing side makes a couple statements that are false, that therefore everything else they say is false. That's not how you're supposed to assess somebody's statements logically. That's emotional based thinking, right? This is contributing to this polarization that we're seeing, right? We often ask ourselves, well, why are we so polarized and divisive now? Well, it's because we have grown into this notion that if somebody on the other side makes a few false statements, everything else they say is false, and everybody else on that side is wrong and can be dismissed entirely. No, there are going to be places where you disagree, and you have to become tolerant of that. We're becoming very lazy and irresponsible. And it's because we've, fostered this culture where people devalue truth, they devalue science, they devalue, intellect and vocabulary. And I think COVID was a very important turning point in social media history, because people on social media during the COVID masks mandates and the vaccine mandates, people became distrustful of the scientific authorities who were trying to instill these protocols onto people, right? And because on social media, it spread that there were some counter data, some small portions of counter data that worked against the safety of vaccines, some or certain ones, or because the data on vaccine safety wasn't 100% conclusive, that therefore everything else the scientific authorities would say was dismissed as false. That's not how science works. People forget that there is such a thing as scientific consensus, and science is never 100% conclusive, at least almost never. So we've developed this perfect breeding ground for conspiracy theories to spread, because the algorithm loves these conspiracies. I mean, it gets the most clicks and the most views, and that's what boosts them up. And of course, they're going to spread like wildfire around the internet, and it's going to influence tons and tons of people to further distrust science, or at least scientific authorities. Also concerning is that we are seeing the increase of echo chambers, of people selectively deciding which influencers they want to hear and see, so they get to pretty much block and mute everybody else who they disagree with, and now they're living in these echo chambers where they hear the same content over and over from the same people, confirming, right, confirmation bias, confirming their own conspiracies, right, reaffirming to them that everything they believe is good to go and there's no reason to fact check, and now they've been sufficiently radicalized to think that it's acceptable for them to propagate this conspiracy even further. And now with the advent of generative AI, it's getting even easier to make these false narratives up. Now you can generate all kinds of fake photos that look almost identical to the real thing. It's getting harder and harder now to distinguish between what's fake and what's real. Even politicians are having a hard time and claiming now that some AI photos are real. So now it's a double whammy of confusion. People are becoming more distrustful, and this continues and continues on. It's a cycle of chaos. As social media goes through this personalization phase, where people are being fed information that's being tailored to their preferences instead of what's factual, as we administer to ourselves larger and larger doses of junk information, as we hide behind these anonymous profiles with a progressively smaller window to the external world, we are more susceptible now than ever before to adopting these extremist, tribalistic ideologies that can end up harming ourselves if we don't change. I mean, it can turn people into negative, hateful, bigoted people who are polarized to such an extreme that they are not willing to talk to the other side. They're not willing to have discussions freely. This can plunge us into a dark time where progress is stalled. So how do we fix this? How do we solve this? How do we stop this information? How do we prevent misinformation from propagating? Especially with AI. That's another challenge on top of what we already have to face. So how do we solve this? Well, we can make these AI watermarks. We can embed every AI image with watermarks that tell you conclusively on the spot if it's an AI-generated image or not. But wouldn't there be privacy concerns here? I mean, think of all the details required to make this such a watermark. I mean, location, all kinds of personal data would have to be included. There's probably going to be some privacy concerns there. So that solution's likely limited. We could increase fact checkers. Yeah, I mean, we can just make thousands of people fact checkers on every website. But there are millions of posts per day on each website. So how can you possibly have enough fact checkers, enough resources to handle all that fact checking? And that's going to be difficult to do. Again, a very limited solution. How about if governments got more involved here and they started to increase the penalties for misinformation or disinformation online? What if they started imprisoning people for it? What if they began to crack down on it more and more? Great. But what if the next administration comes in and replaces those regulations with something less aggressive in the name of free speech, right? Well, now you're susceptible to political change, and it's not a solution long term. We need a solution that works regardless of the circumstances at hand, that works continuously and on every single post there is online and immediately. And it's a long-term solution. In other words, it will survive all those discrepancies, political discrepancies that may occur in the future. We need that kind of solution. So what could that be? The best solution is the simplest. The solution is science literacy. It's giving people the sense that they can understand what is true. People feel like they can't do that today. People are confused. They are lost because they don't know what science means. They don't know the methods of science, and they feel powerless when they go on social media. They feel like they don't know what is true, so they rely on others. They rely on what spreads quickly, what gets the most clicks, what feels good. That's the problem at its core. It's about making people ask the right questions. When they get information, they have to be able to analyze it correctly. Ask themselves, where did this information come from? What is the source? What sources are, counter to this data? What is truth? How do we get to the truth of this statement? That is the analysis that we all have to do when we go online. And this has to be done all the time, right? And this is something that is ingrained in our minds, and it's a very simple thing. It's not that hard for somebody to be taught this mindset, and it's a systemic issue. I mean, it has to be dealt with when kids go to school, especially. It's a very important time. But it can be done. There is a way. There is a solution here. See, when you're not scientifically literate, you devalue the truth to such a degree that you rather not be accurate in your post. You rather look or seem as if you're being accurate or truthful. That is what we see all the time. It's obvious. We see it in almost every charlatan, every ridiculous influencer that posts. It's almost always the case that they don't care about what the truth is. They care about looking as if they have the truth. That's the problem. And we have to reiterate this scientific mindset into people. People have to familiarize themselves with science. They have to do science hands-on. And that's going to give them the urge to be accurate every time they post. Doing science disciplines our minds to continue being accurate, because the more accurate you are, the more truth you get. The more truth you get, the more appreciative you are of it, and the cycle continues. It's a cycle of progress. That's a scientific perspective. So that's what's going to give people the urge to be accurate in their posts. Because right now people don't care about being accurate. They don't have that urge in them to be accurate because they don't care about the truth. But once we instill that scientific mindset into people, then they will care about the truth. They will value it because truth is exciting. It's exhilarating to know what's true about the world. And there's so many things to learn about the world, right? So people aren't valuing truth enough today. And also, when you do science and when you remain accurate and you value it enough and you respect truth enough to continue doing it, well, it's going to enhance the way you see the world. It's going to enhance your outlook on the world because you're not going to be drowning in these problems, right? A scientifically illiterate person sees problems. A literate person in science sees solutions. And that's why people are negative all the time, because they don't understand the solutions. They don't understand the truth, how to get to the truth. They don't understand the solutions to the problems. It's a mess. That's why we have to go back to science, the scientific method. Now, some of you guys might be saying, well, how is this possible, Mike? Can't fight all this. But I submit that as fast as anti-science narratives and anti-intellectualism can spread, so can pro-science attitudes spread. We have the power today to change the world through social media. It's becoming a way powerful tool, a way more powerful tool than it ever has been. And I think that's why we have the best chance now to change the world and change how people see things. And if you notice, all my social media accounts have to do with science, the big ideas, because that's reiterating those basic scientific principles of what's out there. Let's be curious about things. What is the truth? Let's be open to new ideas. And as long as we're human, we're going to have these issues, right? There's always going to be people out there who disagree and everything, but at the same time, I think that if just more people were scientifically literate out there promoting science, scientific thinking, the world would be a way better place. So let's leverage social media as a tool for prosperity and progress instead of wasting it.